On a quiet, snow-blowing Christmas afternoon, Serena Hale sat alone at a small window-side table in the Maple and Pine Bistro, staring at the untouched glass of water in front of her. Outside, the city shimmered beneath a thin curtain of golden daylight, the kind that softened rooftops and made streetlights glow like tiny stars. Inside, warmth wrapped the restaurant in gentle layers. Twinkling wreaths, soft instrumental carols drifting through the air, waiters whose smiles tried to match the cheer in the room. But none of that warmth, none of that carefully arranged festivity, softened the sting of what had just happened to her. She had dressed her best that afternoon. She'd spent an hour curling her hair, choosing a dress that made her feel quietly beautiful, rehearsing a smile in the mirror until it almost felt natural again. This blind date felt like a small promise. Maybe, just maybe, life would choose her for once, instead of leaving her behind the way it so often did. But the moment the man she was supposed to meet walked into the restaurant, everything inside Serena crumbled. He gave her only one quick glance, one dismissive sweep of his eyes, too quick to be accidental, too sharp to be gentle. Then he whispered something to the hostess, turned around, and walked straight back out into the falling snow, without even approaching her table. It was almost impressive, really, how fast a single moment could shrink a person, how swiftly it made her feel small, unlovable, invisible, replaceable. The fragile hope she had carried all afternoon shattered, like a thin ornament hitting the floor. Serena lowered her eyes, feeling familiar heaviness rise in her chest. She tried not to cry in public. She hated drawing attention, but the rejection felt so painfully familiar it almost stole her breath. She breathed slowly, forcing the tightness away, reminding herself that she had survived worse. Still, the sting refused to fade. The empty chair across from her felt louder than anything else in the room. As she stared at it, she whispered inside herself that she should leave. Just stand up and walk home. Pretend the day didn't happen. Pretend it didn't hurt. Pretend she hadn't once again asked life for something gentle only to be handed another bruise. Her phone buzzed with a notification, one she ignored. She wasn't ready for sympathy or questions. Not today. If you believe kindness and second chances still matter in this world, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Corner and tell us where you're watching from. She had recorded that cheerful tagline a week earlier for her storytelling channel. The irony made her breathe out a humorless laugh. She couldn't help thinking how strange it felt to talk about hope and compassion when she could barely offer any to herself. Serena leaned back slightly, staring out the window. Snowflakes twirled against the glass, soft and slow, as if the world outside was moving more gently than her heart felt. She wondered once again if she was meant to walk through life alone. It had been 3 difficult years. Years of losing her parents too soon, ending a toxic relationship that drained the best parts of her, and slowly trying to rebuild her identity piece by aching piece. She lived in a tiny apartment, worked as a junior interior designer, and tried her best to act like she had accepted her loneliness. But days like this, holidays filled with families, couples, celebrations, made the ache inside her pulse louder. Still, she reminded herself quietly, I came here to try. Even wounded hearts deserve a chance. She just didn't know if she had the strength to keep trying after this. Just as she gathered the courage to reach for her coat and leave, something soft tugged at her thoughts. A faint sound, tiny boots pattering across wooden floors. Serena glanced up. 2 little girls, identical and stunningly adorable, stood beside her table. They couldn't be older than 3. Both wore matching red Christmas dresses with tiny snowflake embroidery on the collars. They held identical stuffed bears, one slightly fluffier, the other with a small ribbon tied around its neck. Serena blinked, unsure at first if they had the wrong table. The bolder one rested her chin on the edge of Serena's table, eyes huge and curious. The quieter one peeked from behind her sister's shoulder, hopeful, shy, as if wanting to step forward, but unsure if she was allowed to. Their eyes were brilliantly blue, bright with an innocence Serena hadn't seen in a long time. And oddly enough, something in their small faces gently disarmed the heaviness gripping her heart. Children had a way of doing that, stealing sadness from adults without even meaning to. The girls hovered close, hesitant but intentional, as though they had gathered courage from the glowing decorations before approaching the stranger sitting all alone. Serena straightened in her seat, brushing away the remnants of her earlier tears. She managed a soft smile, not forced this time, but something real enough for children to trust. Before she could speak, a tall man approached from a few tables away. He looked to be in his early to mid-30s, his expression shifting from surprise to relief when he spotted the twins. He didn't look angry, just slightly flustered, like a parent used to small adventures unfolding faster than he could keep up. The bolder twin leaned even closer to Serena with the most disarming sincerity Serena had ever seen. And for a moment, everything paused. Serena's breath caught, because in the child's eyes, she saw something far deeper than simple curiosity, something like recognition. Like the little girl sensed Serena's loneliness the same way children sometimes sense when an adult badly needs a small miracle. The thought hit Serena softly at first, then deeply. These two little girls had not come to her table by accident. The tall man finally reached them. He knelt beside the twins, offering Serena an apologetic smile, one warm and filled with humility. He introduced himself as Adrian Wells and his daughters Mary and Lainey. He explained that they had recently moved to the city and were still adjusting to a Christmas that felt different, quieter, harder than the ones before. There was a shadow behind his words, one Serena recognized instantly, the kind that comes from a loss too big to name casually. She listened quietly, compassion blooming inside her chest. When Adrian noticed Serena's red-rimmed eyes, she hesitated but eventually admitted what had just happened, how her date had seen her and walked out. His expression softened instantly, as though her pain mattered, as though he understood. He asked her, gently, carefully, whether she might like some company, just so she wouldn't have to spend Christmas afternoon alone. The twins nodded immediately, hopeful little faces glowing with excitement, as if they had been silently waiting for the invitation to become real. And for the first time that day, Serena let herself accept something good without. Serena hesitated only for a second before nodding, her heart warming at the sight of the twins' bright anticipation. They looked as though they had already adopted her, their tiny hands clutching their stuffed bears like treasures they wanted to share. Adrian gently pulled out the chair across from her, and for the first time since the heartbreaking moment earlier, the empty seat didn't feel mocking. It felt full, filled with possibility, with kindness, with something she couldn't yet name. The girls immediately began chatting in bursts of excitement. Mary, the bold one, proudly introduced her bear, Snowpuff, while Lainey shyly displayed her own bear, Sugar Cookie. They sang little snippets of their favorite Christmas songs, giggled when they messed up the words, and leaned against Serena as though they had known her much longer than 10 minutes. Their innocence melted the weight on her shoulders with surprising ease. Adrian watched them with a mixture of gratitude and exhaustion, the expression of a parent trying endlessly to be strong for his children even when life had left tiny cracks in his own armor. When the food arrived, he encouraged the girls to sit properly, but they kept drifting toward Serena, drawn to her warmth like small, hopeful magnets. As Serena listened to them chatter, Adrian quietly began to open up. He told her about raising the girls alone after losing his wife unexpectedly 2 years earlier, how every holiday since then had felt like walking through a room full of memories that refused to stay still. How moving to a new city was supposed to be a fresh start, but instead it made everything feel unfamiliar, especially for the girls. Serena felt her heart ache for him. His voice wasn't bitter, just tired. Tired in a way she understood too well. She told him about her parents, the quiet grief she still carried, the loneliness she fought through each day. Talking to him felt strangely natural, as if both of them had lived in parallel shadows, and suddenly stumbled upon someone who understood the language of quiet pain. By the time dessert arrived, the twins had fully claimed Serena as theirs. Mary climbed onto her lap to show her a picture she had drawn earlier that morning, while Lainey wrapped her tiny fingers around Serena's hand, as if afraid she would disappear as she let go. Adrian watched with a look in his eyes that made Serena pause, a look of wonder, as if he hadn't seen his daughters as joyful in a very long time, laughing freely, trusting instantly, letting someone new into their tiny circle of comfort. He cleared his throat softly and looked at Serena with a mixture of hesitation and hope. "Would you maybe like to see us again sometime?" he asked gently, not in a way that pressured, hinted, or assumed. Just a quiet question. A question offered like a gift. The twins immediately gasped, bouncing with excitement. "Yes, please," Mary said. "Please come again," whispered Lainey, her voice soft but filled with earnest longing. Serena felt something warm spread across her chest, rising slowly like sunlight pushing away a cloud. She hadn't expected to feel this. Not today, not so soon, not after everything life had taken from her. But sitting there, with two tiny arms wrapped around her waist and a man across the table looking at her as though she had brought color back into a grayscale world, she realized something inside her had shifted. She nodded. "I'd like that," she said softly. The twins clapped. Adrian smiled. Really smiled. The kind that reached his eyes and softened the lines stress had carved into his face. They talked about Christmas activities happening around the city over the next few days. Ice skating, holiday markets, a tree lighting ceremony. The girls were excited about, but nervous to attend without more company. Each idea sparked new joy in the girls, and each spark pulled Serena further away from the heaviness she had walked in with. Eventually, it grew late enough that the restaurant began to dim its lights, signaling the end of the afternoon rush. Adrian stood and helped the girls into their coats, while Serena slipped into hers. When they reached the door, the twins turned around and waved at her enthusiastically, their little bears waving with them. Adrian lingered for a moment, offering her a gentle, hopeful smile, the kind that asked a quiet question without speaking aloud. Maybe this is the start of healing for both of us. As Serena stepped out into the softly falling snow, she breathed in the cold air, surprised to feel something warm settle inside her. A warmth she had long forgotten. A warmth she thought life had taken from her for good. She glanced back at the restaurant windows. The twins were still waving. Adrian was still smiling. And for the first time in years, Serena felt chosen, not by a man from a dating app, but by something deeper, kinder, and unexpectedly beautiful. That Christmas afternoon had shown her something she never expected to learn. Rejection sometimes places you exactly where you are meant to be. Because sometimes life takes away what isn't right just to guide you toward the people and the family you never knew your heart was waiting for. If this story warmed your heart or brought a tear to your eyes, make sure to like the video, share it with someone who believes in kindness, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. And before you go, let us know in the comments which moment touched you the most. Because sometimes the smallest unexpected moments become the beginnings of the most beautiful chapters.